Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with a great guest, podcaster all the way from Germany. Let's hear from Joe. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for tuning in. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
I am since January 1st, 2021, a full-time podcaster. I originally started out back in 2012 with podcasting, at this time
Mhm.
a startup podcast in German about German startups. And at one point, I did have an interview guest who wasn't a German native speaker, and he said, "Yeah, okay, I'm more comfortable if we do it. I feel more secure if we do it in English." And so I was doing my first interview in English, and
Mhm.
at one point it got so much of interest as well as mix up on this one podcast feed that I basically carved out my English content. And this, like in 2015, was the start of startuprate.io. I was sticking a little bit with the other team, and then since 2018, do it almost by myself. I do have a co-host for my startup news. He lives in New York City. Hey, Chris. And there's a community manager in the background. His name's Pedro. He's also living here in Frankfurt. Basically, we produce around 2 pieces on average per week, mostly interview with entrepreneurs that you cannot find in English anywhere else. So we have very unique content with um, early to later stage startups who are either looking for investors, international expansion, international recognition, international client stuff like this. That's why they are making their first interview in English with us. And we also had already some very well known names, but I tried to stick with the less well known startups, especially the ones that don't get international coverage, because that's the content people are looking for on my website and on my podcast.
Mhm. So I understand it's a lot of is a business podcast, and that is actually really needed because now with COVID, there's a lot of businesses affected. People don't know, when this economy is going to turn around. A lot of businesses like restaurants and other are having hard time surviving, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of the aspects of that. Tell me a little bit about how COVID has affected in Germany so far.
I would say we've been very lucky, especially here in the area that I'm living. In the city close by, they had some even some curfew at night, where
Mhm.
the when the infection numbers were high, but that has already phased out for quite some time. Right now, it's a little bit strange because you have, when we go to the shopping mall just around here, there's basically only stores related to everyday needs, like grocery stores, like pharmacies, like food, like the Starbucks there. That is still open, but all like the retail clothing, jewelry, what else is there, toy store and stuff like this, they are all closed right now. And that feels very strange, and it's the same case for all across Germany, even though at the time we're talking right now, there's some discussion ongoing between the German states and the federal ministry and the federal chancellor and all the federal ministries involved about when and how to get out of this partial lockdown.
Mm. Yeah, and that is, the key is, the to survive. The survival is important because, one thing is, yes, for sure, we have a lot of problem with right now COVID, but somehow we have to survive. It's like when there's a thunderstorm, trees
Mhm.
bend, and then.
Actually, for me personally, not a lot has changed because I'm working full time from home. I did it with my last job almost exclusively for the last like half year.
Mhm.
Yeah, half year. Um, and basically, you can still go for grocery shopping. Everything is available. You can still go to the beverage store, get your sparkling water, get your Coke, get your Pepsi. Everything's fine, but you cannot do like the real fashion shopping, the clothes shopping, stuff like this. That is a little bit limited, but actually there are some stores you can call. They tell you what they have on the shelves, and basically then you can order and then pick it up in person. So that's also working. So it's, I would say it's a little bit inconvenient. It doesn't limit me very much right now.
Okay. So there is definitely, some businesses are affected pretty badly, some of the in dining restaurants, so
In
the take.
dining theaters,
Mm.
like all the music venues, the cinemas,
Mhm.
the cafes. For example, I mentioned Starbucks, but actually there's a limited amount of people that can go in, of course, with a mask. Then you'll be you get your beverage prepared also from people with a mask, and then there's one way out. So it's basically a one-way lane through the
Mhm.
store, and they removed like all the chairs, all the cushy furniture, everything. It looks pretty strange for Starbucks.
Yeah, I know, but I think for Starbucks probably is going to be okay because they have more of the. But what about these restaurants? Which kind of solely they were uh, in dining. People would just wine and dine for hours, and those are really in bad shape. The takeout here, even in states, the takeout is not bad.
Mhm,
They are surviving, but that's kind of the bulk. Those fancy restaurants, they're where we used to have hours of waiting time, to even sit. So those are now gone, completely gone. uh, so
mhm,
small restaurants which had more of takeout slash dine, maybe like fast food, those are surviving very well so far, actually doing better. Same grocery stores are doing well here, and the Starbucks, here, I mean, they still kind of give more. Is the people would just sit there and drink, yes, but now they have just basically given, people can pick up the drink and go. But still, I think their stock here is also actually pretty up. It was kind of down before, but I think it's doing really well. So the stock market, for Starbucks is really good so far. So
mhm.
not bad actually. But other businesses, some of made record profit, like Amazon, and they probably did very well. But other, the small businesses, I think, in my opinion, they should be able to survive. We should support them. So personally, I go to small grocery stores, um, and also trying to support small restaurant owners, see if we can help them so to keep
Mhm.
growing. I think COVID has really put emphasis on small businesses survival. If somehow we can support that, that would be great. What do you think about that?
And it really also forces them to digitize. At one point, most of the restaurants around here supported some kind of takeout, but now they all have it in the usual apps that are out here. You can order takeout, and you even get it delivered from them either personally, or you use some of the delivery services they have here, and that is all working pretty neat as far as I can tell right now.
Yeah, that is for sure. Here also same thing. So I think, what is the model you think, for the banks? What will happen to the banks? Are they going to loan these struggling survivors? What is right now here in Europe? In US, I know we are getting some of bailout from the government. The payroll protection, some of those small business we're getting some money for, but nobody has, still there's not enough till the
Mhm.
businesses are back and booming.
I can so far only talk about Germany, but one of the models we have here in Germany, Kurzarbeit, was actually adapted by many other countries. It's basically a government scheme where you send people like partially away. You don't have to fire them, and part of the loss in salary will be compensated by by the government, and you have in some cases people that are just working 1 day a week and are 4 day on basically unemployment benefits, but they keep their job, and when this time is over they can return to their job. So that is working pretty well. There was also a special regulation ongoing in Germany until December 31st, where you did not have to file for insolvency under certain circumstances, but at one point there will be an insolvency wave coming, and you may know in Europe, especially in Germany, the small and medium businesses, they are heavily financed by bank loans. So that will take some time, but at one point, maybe end of 2021, maybe in 2022, they'll be hit by a big wave of defaults. It may be possible that at this point in time, the government is looking to support them, because if the banks don't loan out more money, it it's really troublesome for the company to get up and running again. So there will be, of course, some aid when COVID is over. And a lot of how the banks are reacting is how much of loan losses they'll be actually hit with.
That is so true. That the one thing is the banks and who's going to bail them out, and uh, it's a one model, as you said. It's working well for Europe. Is probably is good model here too. That they don't lay off completely. It's like layoff, but like they actually come back as soon as. So there's some kind of financial help till that time.
Mhm.
I think the other thing is they were here. I think President just passed a bill for supporting up to $1,400 for families and low income, and that's probably a big help. So, what do you think is that what ratio they should follow? Is helping families is gonna make difference, or is helping businesses gonna make difference?
Um, I would say you totally need both. There have been a lot of COVID aid packages, also investment money, especially for startups that I'm especially focused on from the German government. I have heard a lot of reports that at least for the normal businesses, the COVID relief, the COVID aid is coming pretty slowly, but that may pick up over time. That's an important part. Plus, there are some like special benefits, tax deductions. You can do a little bit more money for this, a little bit more money for that. So basically, I think they're trying to weight this right now. In my personal opinion, um, you'll totally have to support businesses, because you cannot have a lot of defaults and then it takes years for the business activity to back up, as well as for the employment. So you basically have to lower this bump with supporting the solid businesses. But on the other hand, you cannot completely forget the people. For example, I know a few cases in the United States when you have been unemployed for like a certain amount of time, you completely drop out of the social net. That is not the case here in Germany. There's at least a very low minimum payment you'll get from the government.
And the other thing is, if they give a good payment, then people don't want to come back, because it happened here too that they were getting big checks or good amount of money, and they say, why would even we work? Okay, so there's kind of cuts both ways, but then
Mhm.
you slow down that, and then so it has to be kind of proper way. The other thing is, here the numbers for the economy look better in terms of, so they say, it could be overheating with a lot of financial aid, you know. So the government is pushing money, I think trillions of dollars so far. So probably I was reading about 15 to 18% of GDP or whatever, the big amount they're infusing. But if one third is kind of invested in that, reinvested or invested in that, then the question is, can it lead to inflation? And then, you know, the interest rate right now are lowest, so they might go up, and then the economy is not turning around. So that could be kind of both, um, has to be accurate, right?
Yes, but in terms of inflation, you always have to see there's not one inflation. You're actually seeing some inflation for quite some time that is called an asset price inflation. You can see it at the record closings of like the Nasdaq, the DAX, the Dow Jones. They're making new record numbers, and some of it, not all of it, of course, but some of it is because there's a lot of cheap money from the central banks, and that leads to asset price inflation.
And that is probably true that some of the, you know, the real estate here in US right now is booming actually. So the real estate is doing really well. You know, a lot of houses on sale, and people are getting good money. I guess banks are working hard to get loans approved for that too. So the for some reason, because the interest rate is so low, so everybody wants to buy the house, you know.
It is the same effect we had here for the last few years, even in Germany. You have to see we have now a monetary policy ruled by the European Central Bank, which is actually headquartered not too far away from here, but they have to accommodate the whole European Monetary Union, not only Germany. So for Germany itself, the interest rate is a little bit too low, so the economy is doing pretty well. Plus, at the point in time, like years back when we still had the own German currency, the D-Mark, it was usually the economy was booming, the exchange rate went up, the boom died. But since we do have now the euro, it's a much more stable exchange rate, especially for Germany. And if Germany booms, the euro doesn't necessarily go up a lot. So that also gives an additional boost to the German economy. And that's, for example, what we're seeing in the very good numbers in the listed companies, as well as here in some of the asset prices, especially in and around Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, in terms of real estate prices.
Also, I would like to get your opinion on Brexit. You know, what is the effect and what is the future holding for that?
That's a pretty good question. I do believe some people in the United Kingdom are already regretting the Brexit. I am not necessarily sure that in any case this was a good idea from the perspective of the United Kingdom. Um, and I do believe the two governments that followed the Brexit decision have had no real plan how to actually deal with it. So they just had to fight from crisis to crisis, which wasn't necessarily putting the United Kingdom on a sound footing for the Brexit itself. They'll now have to look and search for what type of business model is working for them. On the other hand, I do believe the demand in the European Union from UK is missing, but also a fighter for a little bit more they tend to like to regulate a lot. Um, the UK always tended to regulate less, so that was a good balance. Now we have to see how the next like few years, the regulation is changing due to that. I do believe the UK, at least in the short term, they made a very bad choice, giving now all the problems they have in the short term with the import also like from essentials, food, drugstore, pharmacies, and stuff like this, where there's some items missing. But I do believe that will be smoothed out pretty soon. And then, as I said, the UK has to look for a business model that works for the UK outside of the European Union. And we'll see how and where they find it. Of course, financial services will be part, of course, tourism, especially like London and the beautiful places in Wales and Scotland, will be part. The oil in Scotland may play a part as well, but they just have to figure out what works for them and what doesn't.
And that is, I think, two good questions. One is about tourism. So that has really gone down, so the tourism industry, I think,
Well, I would say it's almost zero tourism right
yeah,
now.
yeah, right now is zero. And that's the same stands for airlines. So our airlines here in US kind of went down and now stabilized a little bit, but I don't see that coming back so soon. It will be a little bit kind of longer U-turn or whatever turn, because it's going to probably take a couple of years to kind of go back to that. And then other thing is, what about China's
Sorry.
influence and how China is able to survive, and what will happen?
Um, Well, admittedly, I have lived and worked in China for half a year. I speak not more than a few words Mandarin, just like survival knowledge. I want this, I want that, and apparently, the few things I speak tend to have a heavy Beijing accent. So I have a, I have a little bit first-hand experience on dealing with Corona. You totally saw that they're not really a free democracy, which in this very certain case and for those circumstances played into their hand. For example, when they completely shut down Wuhan, that would be something that would be almost impossible in like the United States or the European Union, but they just couldn't make it happen. I'm not really sure if the numbers that are published for the same reason, because the Communistic Party has like their thumb on all the data, if they're completely reliable. But I do believe China may make it out as one of the best bigger economies out of this corona crisis, because they really worked very fast, very forcefully. Admittedly, uh, there may or may not have been opportunities to do a little bit more, especially like cutting down the international spread of corona. But on the other hand, that is something they have nobody really had experience. So we're basically learning about the virus, about the mutation as we go, as they happen. So that's not really a good case you can prepare for. But China has a huge currency reserves in their central bank, in their foreign exchange management unit. They have enough economic power to generate money. They have enough foreign reserves to spend it. So I do believe if there's not a really big flare up in Corona they cannot contain, they'll make it out pretty good. On the other hand, the very limited investment opportunities you have as a Chinese citizen in mainland China, of course, leads to some misallocations we've seen in the past, especially in real estate. We will see how this turns out when the government invests again money in like stimulus packages in the near future, where this money is going and if it's really the most effective use of this money.
Sorry, thank you for that insight, and we'll look forward to talk more with you on economy, and that's really a fascinating topic to discuss as it can affect all our lifestyles. So please come back, and then we'll definitely carry on to the next topic in economy. And it will be a great for my viewers. Any final thoughts you have for our audience?
Well, everybody who'd like to learn more, they can go to startup.radio. That's the website of my podcast. And there in the About Us section or in all the interviews, they're linked to my LinkedIn profile, my social media account, my email. They can just reach out and ask directly. No problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.